Hello guys, Charles here and welcome back to my channel. So I got a comment from Victor Nika who has asked that we talk about some pianistic style voicings on the guitar. So let's talk first about what that means, what a pianistic style voicing is, or at least what my interpretation of his question is. And then I want to give you some advice on incorporating these into your playing and how to actually go about doing that, because there's a few traps I fell into that I want to make sure that you guys don't. So I want to share those with you. So first off, what do we mean by a pianistic style voicing? Well, the right hand of the piano is really what we're talking about here. Now the piano primarily, and all of this is going to be generalizations, primarily deals in its chord voicings with seconds and thirds. Now the reason for that is, for example, we could play C, E, G, B on the piano very comfortably. We might play G, B, C, E. And so C, E, G and B is all thirds, whereas G, B is a third, B to C is a second, and C to E is a third. So that's like a C major 7 voicing that fits very comfortably under the right hand of the piano. Now that particular chord works very easily on the guitar as well. However, there's a lot of those slightly claw and piano positions that just don't fit comfortably on the guitar at all. On the guitar we tend to use what we call spread voicings or open voicings, which are primarily constructed with fourths and fifths as the bigger intervals, so thirds, fourths and fifths. And playing seconds on the guitar is not always an easy thing to do. So let's look at an example of that. Let's do all the examples in E flat major today, I don't know why. This is kind of a go-to E flat major chord we might use. E flat major 7 there, E flat, B flat, D and G. Now, one that works nicely on the guitar but is the same way that a piano player would play it would be just this voicing here. E flat, G, B flat and D, all thirds. So this voicing is a fifth, a third and a fourth. Primarily thirds, fourths and fifths. This is a third, and a third. Now, what that boils down to technically on the guitar is simply whether the lowest note is on one of your first two fingers or one of your second two fingers, basically. So this E flat major 7 voicing here, the first finger is the lowest note. That means all the other notes are going to be to the right, on a higher fret, basically, on higher strings, which means they have to be at least a fourth, because our strings are a fourth apart. So to get the pianistic style voicings, essentially we lead with our little finger. We put our little finger on the lowest note we want, and our hand will go backwards down the frets, and that will give us thirds and maybe even seconds. So hopefully we're on the same page as what we're talking about now. The first thing I want to say, and this is one of the massive traps I fell into, is all of these things, whether it's pianistic voicings, whether it's spread voicings, drop voicings, Tim Miller GMC, who knows, all these harmonic things that we've talked about, superimpositions, family of 4, Barry Harris, sixth diminished, all this stuff. It's a tool, it's a means to an end, it's not the end itself. Now, what I mean by that, like I said, a lesson from my own experience, is GMC was my particular one. I kind of fell in love with the sound of GMC, and that's really great to find something that you like. But I kind of obsessed over it and thought I'm just going to do GMC, or something like I'm only going to play, every day I'm going to play a page from the GMC book until I've got it mastered, then I'm going to move on to the second page. And if you've seen the GMC book, it's about 150 pages. Each one is just a different variation on Stella. So, I mean, I wouldn't even put my least favourite student through that. And I know that I don't have the, I'm not a disciplined enough student to stick to that. So, but for some reason, I kind of thought I had to do it all or nothing. And that's not the way that any of this stuff works. The best way I've found, I think, is to take the Mike Marino approach, and everything kind of falls in underneath that. All Mike Marino says, and it's the same thing that Bach said, let's just find it a slightly interesting, but not distracting, because there's going to be melodies and soloists, but a slightly interesting top line, and just build harmony below it that supports it. And all we're interested in is the movement of the top line, and the harmony will fall into place on the instrument. So let me give you an example of that. Again, let's stick to our E flat here. If I want to go from this voicing here to maybe I just want the note F on the top. I want to go with my voice leading? Well, there's a couple of ways I could do that. I could do this. So that's just going to a 6/9 voicing. I could go. That's going to like a relative minor voicing 11. But those are just very standard guitar shapes. Or I could do this. So that's one of the piano-y voicings. Now, it's achieved the same thing. It's got my top note from a G to F, but I just chose that voicing. And that's it. Now, the tool that I used to do it is not that important. It doesn't matter if I used that, or my 6/9 voicing, or my minor 11, or if I used a Tim Miller thing and went like that, or like that, or this. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that it was musically interesting. And that's really this first point I'm trying to get across. All of these devices started as musically interesting and then were formulated into a method. It wasn't a method and then became musically interesting. Okay? So always let the music lead you. And I think if you just keep Mike Marino's advice in ear and in mind at all times, it really stops us worrying about these as if they're all separate things. It's all just chords, it's all just comping, it's all just harmony, and it ties in together. So with that said, let's talk about how to actually start to include these voicings a bit more comfortably in your playing. Don't play something because you're trying to do that particular technique, and the Holdsworth thing's a good example of this. I used to try and come up with arrangements of standards where my hand was like this because I wanted to look like Holdsworth and get that thing comfortable. That's fine, but at the end of the day, if you can't quickly play one of these things, if it's not usable, if it's not useful, it's less worthy of your time in terms of your practice time. So a good thing to do is just go through and find the voicings that work comfortably that you can easily start to use. So we might start with this E flat voicing here. And I might just go through the chord scale and tick or cross the ones that I am going to want to focus on and the ones I'm not going to want to focus on. So that's a good option there. I can easily use that very comfortably. Major 7, then my minor 7. Nice. Another major 7, easy. Dominant voicing. That's nice. Another minor voicing. Half diminished. Really easy, that one. That's 17, 15, 13, 13. Which is D, F, A flat, C. And then I'm back to E flat. So all of those voicings are really easy to use, or relatively easy to use. So I could straight away, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment, I could straight away start to insert those into my playing. So what about first inversions? Well, let's try a first inversion of E flat. This. Okay, so I look like Holdsworth now. That actually, for me, isn't too bad. I don't have huge hands, but I think I do have big hands. I don't have Holdsworth big. Every Holdsworth transcription I look at, I think, at least for a few of the chords, I think there's no way they've transcribed that correctly, and then it turns out that they did. So anyway, there's a first inversion major 7. Quite a nice voicing. I could probably start to use that. I don't tend to use that one, I'll be honest, but I could start to use that. It's not too bad for me. F minor first inversion. Yeah, that's a nice one. I do use that voicing. G minor. A flat major, B flat 7. Yeah, I could definitely use that one in the higher end here, but maybe, I don't know, if I was down here on like an F, on a D7, that wouldn't be very practical, you see, so I'd probably rule that one out, to be honest. C minor 7, D half diminished. Again, D half diminished, it's okay down there in its first inversion, but if I was doing it down an octave, yeah, it's not too bad actually. Cool, so I've got some that I can tick off there, then I would go through second inversions and third inversions and what have you. And I would just find some voicings that I can actually usefully use when they're not going to be more of a distraction or a hindrance. And they're actually going to be a musical melody supporting tool rather than me playing really nicely and then all of a sudden shoving in a random shape that breaks the flow. So third point I want to make is how to actually fit these into your playing. Well, the way you fit all this stuff into your playing is by fitting it into your playing. Now that might sound obvious, but our playing for most guitarists is based around these same standard shapes. We all use these caged position shapes, whether it's this, or this, or these voicings, It's all pretty standard stuff. And we like those. We like them because they're a great visual framework, both as a soloist and a comper. So what we want to do is any of these slightly more spicy harmonic devices we're using, we want to build them around those caged voicings. We don't want to try and do our own arrangement, again, like I used to try and do, where I'd do the whole arrangement Holdsworth style, because it's not something I would actually end up using. I won't actually play that. I'll use it as a practice tool, but then I don't ever seem to get actually that much value out of it. So we want to get value out of these voicings, and the way to do that is to build them around a nice arrangement of caged chords. So let's look at some examples of that. So we might go back to our E flat here, like we did before, and we can get some movement here with those voicings. Or I could try and see that first major 7 in its first inversion wasn't too bad, so I might practice that. Then I go up to F minor, G minor, A flat. So you see I'm taking one voicing and learning like a movement, or it's just like a lick. I like that. I'm going to practice that actually. So I'm just connecting it to something that I definitely will use and building it from there, because then I'm more likely to actually use this stuff. And if you don't use it, you lose it really. With all these things, they've got to be relevant. I think that's the point I'm trying to get across here. Yeah, it's tough, that one. So I probably wouldn't use that one as low as that because my hands just can't quite comfortably do that. Remember, I did talk about this in a video ages ago. Tuck your elbow in between your guitar and your belly button is a great way to slightly gain like an extra half a fret. Guy you want to check out for all this stuff is Juan Das. Juan Das is an absolute chord playing beast. Let's do another example. Let's look at D minor 7 flat 5 here. So I've now got a couple of chords in a row that I could work on. And these would need to be practiced. But if I want to incorporate these into my playing, this is how I personally would go about doing it. So a second inversion is another nice one I could use. I could go... That's got that nice clash in the middle. And then I feel like this would probably get me nicely to... There it is, A flat major 7, probably that sort of thing. So if I had a certain movement, I'd probably want to come up with like a rehearsed pattern. And that works really nicely. So I'm just letting the voice leading do its thing, letting the melody stay on top, and not worrying too much about the technical side of things. The technique I can work on in practice, but there needs to be a point, and I need to actually think, oh yeah, I am actually going to end up using these. Once you think you've got some voicings in your playing that you are regularly using and you like them, then by all means go back through that chord scale and start to try and add in some of the tricky ones that were more challenging for you. But I don't tend to use too many of these. I probably am actually going to, after thinking about this video. I think it's something I could definitely put more in my playing. But I use obviously the C major 7 voicing. I use that voicing a lot. I use that one, the second inversion. I use that quite a lot. Minor voicings, I think I quite often use that one. You can do it on a second inversion on a minor voicing. There's an F minor, but not practical, you see, for me at least. So that's all I really wanted to share with you. So just to recap those 3 points. Use the melody on the top as the guiding point for all of the harmony devices you're studying. There's so many harmonic devices. At the end of the day, as long as you're supporting a strong melody, then that's the most important thing. The voicings underneath are less important in the moment. We can't be thinking about all the voice leading or all this stuff. That happens in the practice room, so you can come up with some nice voicings to support certain melodies. The second thing, work on eliminating voicings and choosing the ones that are actually going to be useful and practical to you. And then choose those to incorporate into your playing. And then finally, incorporate this into your playing by actually using them, gluing them to things that you're already comfortable using, rather than just trying to do a whole arrangement with these that you're probably unlikely to use. Because most of us, when we panic in the moment, we'll jump to one of these chord shapes. So if we jump to one of these chord shapes and we know we can go to whatever piano voicing is near there, then we're probably going to use it. Whereas we're unlikely to go, let's play Stella and jump straight to this or this. Most people don't do that. So you might have a lovely arrangement worked out that starts there, but you're probably not going to actually use those chords. So thank you, Victor, for your comment, your question there. I hope that's helped you. Anyone else, any questions or comments you want to hear me blabbering on about, then please do leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to get to those as soon as possible. If you did find this one useful, please give it a like, subscribe, ding that notification bell and share with any of your friends who might be stuck in the kind of musical rut that I was. And as always, I hope you're all doing very well, getting plenty of practice in, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers!
Roll up, let me embed a story you'll never forget. Drip, drip, you're drowning in debt now. You can't buy your way out.